I roll over and I'm feeling for her, so I'm going to cuddle with her. Then all of a sudden I realize she's not there, and I sit up like, oh my God, she's going to be mad.
There is a murder confession on audio tape, not a written statement, not a letter written years after the fact. An actual recording, a man's voice, quiet and controlled, explaining to detectives what he did to his wife.
I go out there to wake her up, and I find her, and her body was cold and hard. She was dead.
It was played in a Los Angeles courtroom in 2012. Journalists were in the room. Jurors, people who had covered violent crime for years. The room went silent. Not because of how he said it, because of what he described doing. A woman named Dawn Viens disappeared in October 2009. Her husband had one answer for everyone who asked. She left. She needed space. She wasn't coming back. And for nearly 2 years, most people around him accepted that. The question that follows this case everywhere it goes isn't how David kept the secret, it's how he functioned while keeping it. Comment below if you already have a feeling about that, because this story hasn't even started yet. Dawn Marie Viens was born in March 1970. She met David Viens in the 1990s, when he was already married to someone else. Not a judgment, just the first line of the story. By 2009, the two of them were running a restaurant together in Lomita, California, Time Contemporary Cafe. David was the chef. Dawn handled the front of the house, greeting customers, keeping the business moving. From the outside, it looked like a couple who had built something real. What very few people around them knew was that David Viens had been building something else entirely, for years, right alongside it. In 1993, more than a decade before Dawn disappeared, David was convicted in Vermont for cocaine distribution. He served his time. He moved on. By the mid-2000s, he was in Holmes Beach, Florida, running a restaurant called Beach City Market and Grill, and on the side, he was operating as a wholesale marijuana dealer, selling hundreds of pounds to smaller distributors, not street-level, commercial volume. In January 2005, police and DEA agents raided their Holmes Beach home. Inside, they found over 1,000 pounds of marijuana, near a school, opium, a firearm, and a man who had already been convicted once for drug distribution and had apparently not stopped. Dawn was not charged. She publicly defended her husband, told investigators he was just a middleman in a larger operation. Meanwhile, David had made her the manager of their restaurant, so he could focus on his other business without distraction. Florida prosecutors dropped all charges in April 2005, in exchange for David's full cooperation against others in the network. DEA agent Derek Pollock, who worked the case, later said David was an agent's dream to work with. He returned calls. He gave up names. He walked. 4 years later, he and Dawn had relocated to Southern California and opened Time Contemporary Cafe. And the woman who had stood by him through a federal drug raid, who had defended him publicly, who had managed the restaurant while he ran a drug operation, she was the one greeting customers at the door. The marriage, by most accounts, had been under serious pressure for a long time. Financial arguments, control, and according to people who were close to Dawn, something that went further than arguments. Her best friend, Karen Patterson, would testify in court that David had choked Dawn, that he had threatened to beat her, that on at least one occasion, Dawn called Karen in the middle of an incident of abuse and begged her not to call the police. Karen honored that request. She would publicly apologize for it years later, standing outside a Los Angeles courtroom in tears, telling anyone who would listen that sometimes you have to go beyond what your friend asks of you to save their life. Then there's what Todd Stagnito witnessed. Stagnito was a longshoreman, a friend of David's. On the evening of October 18, 2009, he was at the restaurant while David went through the day's receipts, counting the cash. David told him, and I'm rephrasing because of the derogatory words he used, "That woman is stealing from me. And nobody steals from me. I will kill that woman." Stagnito testified to this in court. The following morning, David walked into Time Contemporary Cafe and told his staff that Dawn would no longer be working there. No explanation. She's gone. She won't be back. In the days after Dawn disappeared, her friends started receiving text messages from her phone. She needed a break. She'd left town for a while. Everything was fine. Her friends tried calling back. Nothing. Then a crack appeared. One of Dawn's friends was going through cancer treatment at the time. Dawn would have known that. They were close enough that Dawn absolutely would have known. The texts showed no awareness of it at all. Dawn's nickname among her friends was Pixie. The texts signed off as Pixie. One letter. That was the crack. As the Daily Breeze reporter covering the case put it, who misspells their own name? Dawn's car was left behind, and months before she disappeared, Dawn had quietly left a few $100s with a friend. Emergency money, in case she ever needed to leave the marriage without warning. Nobody came to pick it up. When people asked David where his wife was, he had answers ready. She was in a drug rehabilitation facility. She had moved to the mountains. She had walked out on the marriage. For a man whose wife had vanished without her car, without her emergency money, without saying goodbye to a single person, he wasn't searching for her. He wasn't calling hospitals. He didn't seem worried. The restaurant stayed open. He kept working. A few weeks after Dawn disappeared, David called his daughter, Jacqueline, from his first marriage, living in South Carolina, and asked her to come help at the restaurant. She came. And before she had even settled in, her father put Dawn's phone in her hands and told her what to type. Jacqueline sent text messages from Dawn's phone to Dawn's friends. That she was fine, that she needed a break, that she was on vacation and would be in touch. The prosecution would later describe this as coercion. David Viens had not just killed his wife. He had recruited his own daughter to cover it up before she even understood what she was covering up. He made her a liar before he made her a witness. And then one night, the two of them drove home from the restaurant together. They had been drinking, and on that drive, he told her why. He said he and Dawn had gotten into a bad argument one night. He wanted to sleep. Dawn kept pushing. He blocked the bedroom door with a dresser. She forced her way in anyway. So he tied her up in the living room, taped her mouth closed, and went back to sleep. He told his own daughter this, and then he told her that Dawn's body would never be found. Who does that? Who brings their child into a lie first, makes her complicit, and then confirms the worst, as if the sequence somehow made it easier to hear? By the time Jacqueline knew what she had been texting about, she was already in it. Going to the police meant explaining why she had sent those messages. Jacqueline did not call the police. She packed up and moved back to South Carolina, and told no one except her sister. Meanwhile, David had started a relationship with Kathy Galvan, a waitress from the restaurant. She moved into the house he had shared with Dawn. Dawn's sister, Dana Papin, eventually filed the missing persons report. By August 2010, 10 months after Dawn disappeared, the case was transferred to the Homicide Division of the LA County Sheriff's Department. They had found something in the couple's former home. Blood. Traces of Dawn's blood on the walls. And there was something else investigators had already noted. After Dawn disappeared, David had quietly remodeled Time Contemporary Cafe from top to bottom. New fixtures, new surfaces, new concrete poured across the floor. When detectives eventually searched the restaurant, they spent 2 days digging up that concrete with cadaver dogs. They found nothing. Homicide detectives began re-interviewing everyone around them, working backward through the timeline, and a name kept surfacing. Jacqueline. They flew to South Carolina. When detectives sat across from her, Jacqueline told them everything. The drive, the drinks, what her father confessed in that car, the duct tape, the living room, the death, and the line he told her after, that the body would never be found. Detectives asked Jacqueline to do one more thing. Call him. She did. Dad, she said. I told the police. They're gonna come after you. I told them everything. The next morning, February 23, 2011, David picked up a copy of the Daily Breeze, a local paper. There was a story about investigators finding blood evidence at his former home. He asked Kathy to get in the car. Everything up to this point, the fake texts, the emergency money Dawn never collected, what David told his daughter, the blood on the walls, all of it happened before detectives understood what David Viens had actually done to his wife's body. What he described next is the reason this case is different from most. The reason experienced homicide investigators, people trained to absorb difficult things without reacting, sat in that hospital room and struggled to finish the interview. February 23, 2011. David drove to Inspiration Point, a cliffside overlook in Rancho Palos Verdes, above the Pacific Ocean. An LA County Sheriff's deputy spotted the vehicle and moved to stop it. Kathy grabbed David's clothes, trying to hold him back. He jumped anyway. 80 feet. He survived, but the fall left him wheelchair-bound for the rest of his life. He would sit in that same wheelchair throughout his entire murder trial. He was taken to Harbour Ucla Medical Center in Torrance and handcuffed to his hospital bed. That's where detectives found him. And worth noting, when David stood before the parole board in 2026 and was asked why he jumped, he did not say he was overwhelmed. He did not say he panicked. He told the board he jumped to avoid taking responsibility. Detectives sat down beside his bed, introduced themselves, and started recording. March 1st, 2011. First interview. David spoke quietly. A nurse came in at one point to administer Vicodin. He said the night Dawn disappeared, the two of them had been using cocaine together. Something shifted in him. He said it seemed like it had to do with her stealing money from the restaurant. He duct taped her mouth, her hands, her feet. He said he had done this before, at least twice. His framing was that it was how he managed the situation when things got out of hand. To keep her calm, to stop her from leaving or driving while she was on cocaine and alcohol. He had taped his wife's hands, feet, and mouth on prior occasions, and in his own words, it had worked. He had done it. She had calmed down. He had gone back to sleep. In his mind, apparently, it was just something he did. This time, he went back to sleep. 4 hours later, he woke up. Dawn was dead. Bound and gagged, she had choked on her own vomit. In this first interview, he told detectives he had wrapped her body in a garbage bag and taken it to the restaurant dumpster. Detectives came back 2 weeks later, March 15, 2011, and the full account came out. David described taking Dawn's body to Time Contemporary Cafe. He placed her face down into a 55-gallon commercial drum. He filled it with boiling water. He put weights on top of her body to keep it submerged. Then he walked away. The restaurant stayed open. He went to work. He texted her friends from her phone. He told people she just needed space. She was in that drum for 4 days. His exact words, on tape, played to a courtroom full of people who sat in near silence. I just slowly cooked it, and I ended up cooking her for 4 days. He described straining what remained, pouring the liquid into the restaurant's grease trap, separating her bones into 3 garbage bags and mixing them in with restaurant trash. And then he said one more thing. He kept her skull. Stored it in his mother's garage attic. Police searched that attic. Nothing. No skull, no jaw, no trace of Dawn Viens. To this day, not one piece of her has ever been recovered. Why hold on to the skull? That question has never been answered. Not by investigators, not by the prosecution, not by David himself in any of his hearings. Comment below, because 15 years later, that is still the part of this case that has no explanation. The legal challenge prosecutors were facing was significant. No body, no crime scene, no physical evidence showing how Dawn died. The defense leaned directly into that. David Viens pleaded not guilty. He chose not to testify. Near the final hours of trial, he attempted to fire his attorney and represent himself. The judge denied it. The request came too late, with almost no time left in the proceedings. And so the jury heard the tapes. Both of them. They sat and listened to a man describe what he had done to his wife's body, in a tone that matched the words almost not at all. They also heard from Karen Patterson, who described years of violence against Dawn, and a friend she was not able to save. From Todd Stagnito, who repeated under oath what David said in that restaurant the night Dawn died. From Jacqueline, who took the stand and told the jury exactly what her father had confessed in that car. And from Kathy Galvan, who testified that on the morning of the cliff, before he jumped, David turned to her, apologized, and told her Dawn was not coming back. 5 hours of deliberation. Second-degree murder. David Viens sat in his wheelchair and did not react. Dawn's sister, Dana Poppin, broke into tears. He treated her like a piece of meat and got rid of her. Karen Patterson told reporters outside the courthouse. March 2013. Sentenced to 15 years to life. Before sentencing, David addressed the court for 45 minutes from his wheelchair. He said he was hallucinating during the confession, that he had undergone major surgeries before detectives appeared at his bedside, that he didn't remember meeting them at the hospital, that being handcuffed, medicated, and recovering from a suicide attempt made the recording unreliable. He said it was ridiculous to think he would harm his wife over a few $100s. He said he loved Dawn, the same man, on tape, describing what he had done in careful detail, in that same courtroom years later, telling a different story entirely. David Viens has been before the California Parole Board 3 times. First denial, June 2021. He was not fully honest about what happened to Dawn's body. Second hearing, September 2024. He publicly acknowledged it for the first time. The drum, the boiling water, the grease trap, the garbage bags, all of it, confirmed in open proceedings. And then he said something that tells you something about who David Viens is. I've never admitted to anybody that I boiled the body until the beginning of 2024. 11 years after his conviction, after 2 state court appeals, after a federal habeas petition, after his first parole hearing, not once had he said it plainly. He told the board at that 2024 hearing, "I apologize sincerely for murdering Dawn," and then callously lying about it. Denied. April 2026, third hearing, via video link from Courtroom State Prison. He was 62. I took Dawn's life. I know they're hurting every day because of what I've done. I feel horrible. I am solely responsible for everything that happened. Third denial. 3 more years before he can petition again. Subscribe, because this case is not finished. The next hearing will come, and Dawn's family will be there when it does. Dawn Viens has never been recovered. No bone, nothing. Her family has no burial site, no grave, no place to go. The confession told the world how David disposed of her body. It did not answer what the final hours of Dawn's life looked like. It did not say what, if anything, he told her while she was bound in that living room, and he went back to sleep. It did not explain where her skull is. And it did not explain the thing that sits underneath all of it, the thing that makes this case feel like a question about what people are actually capable of, not in the moment of violence, but in the days that follow. He went back to work. He texted her friends from her phone. He called his daughter down from another state to help run the restaurant, while he constructed a version of events that required someone nearby to believe it. He built a new relationship in the same house. He sat in a courtroom in 2013 and said he loved Dawn, and then he spent 11 years refusing to fully admit the truth, even when his freedom depended on it. Some killers run, some confess immediately, some break down. David Viens ran a restaurant. If you know someone whose situation doesn't feel right, make the call Karen Patterson said she should have made. Share this one. Not for views, because Dawn Viens' name deserves to be said, and the people around us who are quietly suffering deserve someone willing to say it before it is too late. Her name was Dawn Viens. She was 39 years old,